You are.
Okay, and Mr. Stewart, you're ready to proceed?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community, even if it is virtually. My name is Mike Little. I'm the mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, December 7th. There you go. I knew it wasn't Tuesday. I don't know why the note said that. So council, first we have to put forward resolution to hold the public meeting without the public intent in attendance. The wording of the motion is included in the agenda. So may I have a member
So moved.
move that? I've got Councillor Murray moving. Is there a seconder for that item?
Second.
Second by Councillor Back. Okay, we'll call a question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. I guess just for the public's benefit, we should probably go through the roll call anyway. I always in my mind go down, where we sit in the council chamber. So I'm going to start on my right. I've got Councillor Murray. Are you present?
Present.
I've got Councillor Forbes. Are you present? Councillor Forbes is having some internet difficulty, and we were working to have Councillor Forbes be able to join us by telephone, and so our staff are going to be working on that. Councillor Bond, are you present?
I'm here.
I've got Councillor Hanson. Are you present?
Present.
Councillor Curran, are you present?
Yes.
And I have Councillor Back. Are you present?
Present.
Okay, so we have 6 of the 7 members of council present at this moment, and we'll do our best to get Councillor Forbes reconnected with us. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone move the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Second.
Second by Councillor Hanson. Call the question. All those in favor, say aye or wave contrary minded. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have a period of up to 30 minutes for members of the public to be able to, oh, and I did just get a note that Councillor Forbes has joined us and she's on the telephone system with us at this point. We reserve up to 30 minutes at the front end of our meeting for comments from the members of the public. And so I have a speakers list that's been created of people who signed up through the clerk's office earlier in the day. And I'm going to go through that now. So, and of course, these people are all joining us virtually this evening. Nazir Merloui, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yes, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Sure. The reason actually I'm, wanted these 3 minutes is I read an article actually in North Shore News about the construction bylaw and amendment to the energy saving. I'm a professional engineer, with some, background in mechanical engineering. And I'm planning actually in, maybe a couple of years to build like a couch house in my house, which is in 2333 Kirkestone Road. So I went through that article and I want to ask one of actually our members, great council members that actually I voted for a couple of you guys, including the mayor, to explain me in a plain language, what's the complication of that bylaw for me as a regular citizen to actually be able to do that. And I quite didn't understand. I went through like in the past 24 hours, I'm aware of this. I went through a bunch of actually, documents, readings. I couldn't conclude as a, member of regular public, if I want to go ahead, how much cost will be added to me, to my cost as a regular citizen. So I think these type of actually bylaws needs more actually, public hearing, more information. So just, because we have like a step 5 code or something like that, it means sometimes lives to people, right? So that's my question. That's my objection, that actually, I think this is pretty actually impacting many people in the near future. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And probably, you can also contact staff. I don't know if we can get Mr. Merloi's contact information and have staff follow up with him. I'm sure we can set up a conversation so that your questions can be answered. But it does represent interesting question regarding applicability on coach houses in the near future. Next up, I have Catherine Fagerland. Catherine, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello.
Yeah, it's a little bit quiet, so if you can speak nice and loud, you have 3 minutes to address council.
Okay. Do you want me to share my screen if I can see where to do that? Yeah, there I don't know how to unshare my, oh, there it is. There's the video. Okay, hi.
Hi.
Hello. Just a minute. I just need to pull up my little dialogue thing here. Okay. Hello. My name's Catherine Fagerland and I live at 1875 Deep Cove Road in North Vancouver. Tonight, I'm speaking in favor of adoption of the proposed amendment bylaw 8475 to construction bylaw 8271 2017. Okay, I'd like to set the record straight on a lot of misinformation that's been circulating regarding many aspects of the proposed bylaw amendment. Number one, the proposed, and this is, there has been chat, emails, Facebook, North Shore News stuff. Okay, one, the proposed amendment is not retroactive. Two, the proposed amendment applies only to new construction and commercial major renovations where the value of the work is more than $1 million. This is all clearly stated in the bylaw. There is no provision in the bylaw that would mandate its application for any residential renovation. Three, the proposed amendment addresses emissions from fossil fuels, not breathing. Four, construction practices that will result from this amendment are doable and indeed are being implemented widely in Metro Vancouver, even in residential rental buildings. Five, the amendment will create a clear and level playing field which will benefit builders in our community. The knowledge and technology needed to implement the measures prescribed by this bylaw amendment are readily available in the industry. Buildings that meet the requirements have already been constructed. They were not more expensive to construct and they cost significantly less to operate while meeting the goals of reduced GHGIs. These buildings use much less energy when compared to conventional buildings and also take advantage of rapidly advancing technologies related to alternative energy sources. The DNV declared a climate emergency in June of 2019, supported by all councillors and in keeping with all other North Shore municipalities. This is an essential part of the required action towards that reality. Let's get on with it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have Michelle Sheardown. Can you hear me? You're muted. We can fix that.
I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds great. Okay, you have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to speak. I haven't spoken at council before, and I'm really thankful that we all get to participate this way. I am interested to be part of the process, and I'm so glad to be part of a community that has recognized a climate emergency and is acting to take positive steps and building long-term solutions to create a sustainable community for all of us. And I read through this bylaw. Looks like a lot of work has gone into it and people were consulted, the right people were consulted. And I understand it has been gone through 3 readings and tonight should just be the regular course of things, all of the procedures that have taken place already to show that it makes sense. We need to do this. So thank you for letting me speak and for your process.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Okay, council. I have no further speakers at this time. I have 2 other people that have signed up to speak at their agenda items, this being 8.6. I have a speaker in favor and a speaker opposed. And so we will have further public input at that time. At this time, I'm going to resume the agenda, and we have a delegation coming up. We have our friends at the North Shore Black Bear Society. Christine Miller is going to be making some year-end comments. Christine, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
I'm going to ask you to speak up nice and loud. Maybe it's my speaker, but everybody's coming in very quiet.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Little and Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Is that loud enough?
Yes, it sounds great. Thank you.
On behalf of the North Shore Black Bear Society, I want to thank you for supporting its education programs for so many years. Our goal is to reduce preventable bear deaths on the North Shore by providing attractant management information and bear awareness education in order to live and recreate safely on the North Shore. I started volunteering with the North Shore Black Bear Society back in 2005. And since that time, partnerships within the District of North Vancouver's departments, specifically solid waste, bylaws, and parks, have grown strong. My intention tonight was to introduce Lucy Cadman, the Society's education coordinator, and have her make a PowerPoint presentation highlighting our accomplishments during 2020. In this pandemic year, Lucy successfully reinvented our education program delivery using Zoom, education sheets for emailing and mailing, and social media. The allotted 5 minutes on this agenda will not allow time for her presentation, so I will highlight some of the Society's accomplishments in 2020. The Society received 1,147 bear reports, which offered us opportunities to answer questions and provide attractant management and safety advice on the phone or by email, as well as hang district bear in area signs in 250 locations to inform others. Once some COVID restrictions had been lifted and some neighborhood canvassing was resumed, 2,634 homes received our door hangers. Throughout the pandemic, houses continued to sell, and in the City and District of North Vancouver, 791 new homeowners received our Living in Bear Country information package in the mail. To provide you with additional information, I will email you the Society's year-end report. I'm also here to announce my retirement at the end of this year. I can move on knowing that with Lucy Cadman's leadership and commitment, supported by new and returning directors and volunteers, the Society will continue to evolve and grow and help North Shore residents, visitors, and wildlife. Thank you for your leadership in passing the new attractant bylaw. The adoption and enforcement of this bylaw will be a win for residents and bears, and it's a very happy note for me to retire on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine, for your years of service in this role. I wish you all the best in your retirement from this position, although I'm sure it'll be, as an advocate, a passionate advocate for bears in our community, you probably won't be too far away, I've got to imagine. Council, after a delegation presentation, there are opportunities for council questions. I have Councillor Murray, can we start with you moving
I just
the delegation?
Yes, move receipt of the delegation.
Is there a seconder for receipt? I've got Councillor Back. Councillor Murray, go ahead. Any further comments or questions of the delegate?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Thank you for your dedication over the years to our community. We are better for it because of you. And there you go. Now I can see your whole face instead of that's good. Nice to see you, Christine. But I just wanted to thank you for all your work, and I'm glad that we have been able to advance this bylaw and the work that the Black Bear Society has done over the decades in the District of North Vancouver. We still have a ways to go, and certainly the experience of having to put down the many bears that were put down this summer tells us that we need more work. But I know that you will be that advocate, as Mayor Little has suggested, even though you're retiring from the helm. And we want to hear from the community in regards to how we can further strengthen the work to protect the wildlife that we love so much in our community. It's why many of us love to be here and live here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just also wanted to say a big thank you to you, Ms. Miller, for all of your work over the years and your passion and commitment to this cause, which is such an important one for our community. And we know that when we hear from residents, when sadly a bear is lost, we certainly know that it really affects people deeply. So just thank you so much for all the work that you put in, and all of the hours that you've put into this cause, and organized people in such a way. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillors Hanson and Forbes. Councillor Hanson. Oh, you're muted, Councillor Hanson. There you go.
Ms. Miller, thank you so much for your service to our community, and the Bears, thank you. You've made such a huge difference throughout the time that I've been active in local government politics. You've been an institution with respect to bear preservation on the North Shore, and I can't overstate the contribution that you've made to this cause that you've represented so well. I guess my question for you would be, before you retire and while you're now still president, if you were to give us recommendations with respect to the most important action steps that remain outstanding, what would you say is the most important action step for us to take with respect to bear protection on the North Shore that has not yet been taken?
I think the most important thing is for the enforcement of the bylaw to be very active. There have been bylaws in many municipalities over years that are not enforced, and people just learn to ignore them and they don't mean anything. But with the District of North Vancouver, you've had a seasonal waste compliance officer that's gone around at nighttime after bylaw officers are no longer on the streets. And that's been very, very important. But there are other parts of the attraction bylaw that also need to be enforced, like unpicked fruit or other attractants on people's property. So I would say that enforcing that bylaw is key. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. And two thank yous to you, Christine, for all your work, all your years that you've put in doing this, and all the bears that are going to be saved going forward now that we have this new bylaw in place. I just wanted to mention to you, because I haven't had a chance to talk to you after your AGM, that I watched the video all through your AGM that you had at the AGM, and it was a beautiful, beautiful video. And I wish that more people maybe could see that video again. I don't know if you're planning on showing it again, but I thought it was well worth people getting to understand a little bit more about bears and possibly how to live with them too.
Well, when I send in the year-end report, I will include in that email a brand new YouTube clip that's with Ellie Lam. I just watched it before the meeting, saying much of the same things about the nature of grizzly bears and black bears. And so I will put that information into the email, and hopefully people will have a chance to look at it.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Christine. I'm sure we'll see you volunteering around.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Kern.
Thank you, Christine. We have laughed together. We have high-fived each other. We have cried our eyes out together. So I am really grateful for everything that you've brought. Lucy is amazing, and I'm really excited to continue the work that you have been such a champion of for so long. So thank you. We're gonna be good ambassadors and good representatives, and you've left huge shoes to fill, but volunteers never stop volunteering, do they? So I'm sure we're going to still see lots of each other, but I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. And yeah, just for my last comments on this, I look forward to seeing you in the neighborhood at the coffee shop. That's where we always run into each other there, Christine. I've followed Lucy Cadman's, some of her social media posts. I look forward to meeting her in person to get a better understanding of how she intends to lead the North Shore Black Bear Society going forward. But thank you very much for your service to the community. We are very grateful.
Thank you.
Council, I see no further speakers at this time, and we have a motion on the floor to accept the delegation, and I will call the question on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you again for your presentation and your service.
Thank you.
Okay, Council. Moving along in the agenda, we have the adoption of minutes for 4 sets of minutes. I did just want to point out that there was an addenda posted on Friday about one of the sets of minutes. I believe it was 5.4. Let me just double check here. And 5.4, we did change one bullet point in those before officially bringing it forward.
It was 5.3, Your Worship.
5.3, sorry about that. There it is, there's the marker. And it was just a slight change when Mr. Teven was talking about step code level 5. It was originally written in as he was referring to I believe the energy requirements for electrification of vehicle fleet. That was how it was originally noted. What he was actually talking about at the time was step code 5, the construction level 5. And so that has been changed, revised in the package that is being put before council at this time. Will someone move that set of all 4 sets of minutes, including that change? Moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Councillor Curran. Any other errors or omissions? Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, Council. We have item number 6, which is the release of closed meeting decisions. And from the November 16th meeting, there is an acting mayor schedule that has been released that will govern our regular meetings of council, or sorry, our acting mayor coverage for the 2021 calendar. We have also released the Advisory Oversight Committee's recommendations and appointments, and this includes appointments for Advisory Design Panel, North Vancouver District Public Library, and the North Vancouver Recreation and Culture Commission, and all of the people that are reappointed and the new appointees that are listed there in the package. Moving on to number 8, reports from council or staff. At this point, council, I'd like to propose a consent agenda. We have, obviously, with a 560 odd page package, we have a fair amount of information there. A number of the items are at adoption, so no debate, or they have, we have very recently discussed them. What I'm proposing is that items 8.1, which is the council meeting schedule, 8.2, the Waterworks Regulation Bylaw Amendment, 8.3, the Sewer Bylaw Amendment, 8.4, the Solid Waste Removal Bylaw Amendment, 8.5, the Fees and Charges Bylaw Amendment, and then skipping to 8.10, this is the Rodenticide Use in D&D Corporate Pest Management Policy, 8.11, immediate action items from the Rental, Social, and Affordable Housing Task Force. 8.12, this is the District of North Vancouver Child Care Action Plan. I'm proposing that those items be all put forward for consent. As with any consent agenda, all it takes is one member of council to withdraw one of those items, and we'll return it for regular discussion. Councilor Bond, your hand is up. Are you proposing withdrawing one of those items?
I'm just wondering if we can get a comment from staff on 8.11. I'm wondering if there's a staff presentation attached to that agenda item.
Mr. Milburn, did you have a presentation for that?
Thank you, Worship. We're just here to answer questions relative to the input provided in the report tonight.
Okay, that's all. Okay, no objection to keeping that in there then, Councillor Bond?
If council's good with everything that's in the report, then I'm fine to put it on consent agenda.
Okay. Councillor Back, did I see your hand as well, or were you concerned? Did you want something withdrawn?
No, I was going to just second your recommendation there.
Noted, seconded. Any other member of council wishing to have something removed from there? Okay, I'm going to call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary minded? Okay, so Mr. Clerk, I'm going to take that as unanimous consent for the consent agenda items. And so if members of the public are joining our meeting here tonight for items 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.10, 8.11, and 8.12, those items have just been passed in consent. And I know it's rather aggressive to have that many things go through, but as you can see from tonight's agenda, we still have lots of things to discuss in the time remaining. We are now on to returning to what's left in the regular meeting listing. We're going to zap straight forward to item 8.6. And this is the one that I have two speakers signed up to speak, one for and one against. So at this point, Judith Brooke, can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor Little, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Judith Brooke. I live in the 2000 block of Laurelland Drive in the district.
Welcome.
I am speaking in support of passing this motion before you for the final adoption. As we are aware, it has gone through the first, second, and third reading. There's been a lot of work by your staff and councillors on considering this on all the angles. The developers are on board, as we see in the report from your staff. Much less energy is used with low carbon systems in place, and emissions are reduced. So this is clearly a win-win. It is better for the homeowner and better for the climate. There was a fair bit of misinformation, as an earlier speaker alluded to, on this topic that has been spread around, but council is aware of the work and the facts of the reports before you. And you have already approved and are just now facing the final step of implementing this very important piece of legislation. I would highly recommend that you do so and that you remain true to your intent of this original motion, and know that you have many, many supporters behind you. As a woman stated during the public input, I believe her name was Catherine, she ended with, "Let's get on with it." And I second that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Judith Brooke. Next, I have Peter Teven. Peter Teven, can you hear me? I don't know if you're muted, Peter.
No longer muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. You have
okay.
3 minutes to address council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Peter Tevan, 1900 block, Indian River Crescent. I speak to you this evening with serious concerns about the process employed, and you know, a couple of speakers have just alluded to how this has gone through due process for second and third reading. I think I'm being generous when I say that first, second, and third reading took all of about 10 minutes during the November 23rd special meeting of council. During that meeting, it was agenda item 3.6. And of course, it's back for adoption now at the very next meeting of council. It's my opinion that this process so far has been deeply flawed. I want to point your attention or bring your attention, council, to the Council Procedures Bylaw 7414, Part 4, Section 22 on public input. Now, you'll recall that I was asking for a public hearing so the public could get up to speed, maybe even buy into this process. But during the last meeting, under Section B, the Council Procedures Bylaw says an individual will not speak more than once at a meeting or for a period of longer than 3 minutes. Yet at the last meeting, one individual Ms. Lori Parkinson was permitted to speak twice in the same meeting and to the same agenda item, first in the general public input session, and then again at the item as proxy for another person. And I cannot ever recall this having been done, to let somebody speak in proxy for another. I don't know if as a member of the general public, I have a right to rise on a point of order, but if I felt I did, I certainly would have. It also in section C, article 2, it says that no one can sign up on behalf of another person. Yet we have this anomaly on November 23rd. On a further concern, on the previous agenda that night, on agenda item 3.4, Marvell Developments, Mr. Geller was permitted in his so-called 3 minutes to speak uninterrupted for 6 minutes and 36 seconds minimum. And then after that, council engaged him in banter and discussion. And so I ask you, if you don't hold Mr. Geller to that standard, how can you ask others to then hold that standard? I think that is quite unfair. The other thing that I want to draw your attention to is that the bylaw states speakers shall sign up in advance through the municipal clerk, and that list will be on a first come, first served basis starting at 6:30 p.m. But during the pandemic, we're not following that procedure at all. We have sign up anytime once the agenda is issued, and it gets cut off before the actual legislated start time occurs.
Step in just for a moment. Your 3 minutes is nearing completion. I'll give you a little bit of extra time, but do you have any comments about the bylaw that you signed up to speak to?
I certainly do.
Okay.
I certainly do.
I'd encourage you to get there. I wouldn't want to cut you off without having given you an opportunity to get there.
Well, I certainly hope you wouldn't cut me off before 6 minutes and 36 seconds.
I absolutely, unfortunately, I have that requirement. I don't recall what occurred at the time of the other item, but it's immaterial to the construction bylaw tonight. So do you have any further comments about the construction bylaw?
Well, Your Worship, I would contend that extra time given in the last meeting resulted in what I consider a travesty of public input, where first, second, and third reading were rushed through in the last 10 minutes leading up to 11 p.m. And you know, I think that what I came up with was a reasonable request for the public to be greater involved, the public to be informed. I don't believe that there's any member of council who could answer the question of how to build to step code 5, because I've done my share of research, and you know, I make a habit of doing quite thorough research. And I don't even think that there's a member of staff, because the fact of the matter is, in order to get to step code 5, you must employ an energy consultant. And that's the only way to get there. So there's really no one who can answer the question, what does it take to build a step code 5 building? I want to also speak to the question I raised about whether or not this had any relation to humans breathing. That was made out to be false information. And of course, the whole point was to illustrate how ridiculously low the limit of 3 kilograms per square meter of building space is. It is so low as to be a de facto ban on natural gas. I have to tell you that, you know, I was there, and I participated in the 2018 election. And I think it's fairly certain that this council was elected on a mandate to slow and more wisely manage development. It was on a mandate to enhance and provide infrastructure, and to allow infrastructure to catch up with the pace of development. But what I have seen since then is that this council has abandoned that mandate and become obsessed with a radical environmentalist agenda that is not concerned with people understanding. They're not concerned with the costs that will be imposed on people. And I did check, and the cost of an environmental consultant just to design is between $5,000 and $7,000. There's a lot of questions about this, a lot of concerns, and there is an inordinate amount of rush on the part of council. I mean, the audacity of saying, we're up against the wall, we need to pass this now, we can talk later, is an affront to the public input process that is core to our democracy. I think I'll leave it at there, but I have to tell you, I'm gravely, gravely disappointed
Okay.
And I think you should set this aside and go back to public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will just say that in the speaker's order at that other public hearing, a person, or sorry, it was a regular council meeting. The last item came up for the evening, and it was about 10:30 at night. And a person who had waited through the whole evening had to drop off, and they asked someone else who was in the public meeting to read their statement for them. I thought it was a reasonable option at the time, considering the late hour, and I allowed it. And I think that it was, if anything, it was actually supporting and permitting public input at the item, but maybe people with different viewpoints on the matter will disagree with me. But it's a judgment call I made at the time. Council, at this time, we have item 8.6 that has been brought forward here. Mr. Milburn, do you have any opening comments on the matter?
Your worship, as a reminder, it's here for adoption, so no staff presentation, no debate.
All right, I gotta get sorted back out with where I am. There's no other staff comment on it at the time, no response to any of the comments that were made.
Mayor Little, though, could we just, nothing's been moved yet, so I would just ask that maybe we just clarify the process to date, because we've been talking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions for many, many months. And I think there was a suggestion by Mr. Teven that somehow this was just done, you know, on a one-off basis, and that there was no process. He's challenging the process, and I would just like to ask staff.
Sorry, may I enter a point of order, Your Worship?
No, you certainly may not, Mr. Teven.
So I would just
I'm going to stop you there for just a sec. I think it's a fair question as to what dates we've gone through and what consultation has gone through.
Thank you.
I think that that's fair. Mr. Milburn, can you please go over the just what the dates were, not materially the bylaw, but just talk about the dates and stages it went through to get to the point where we're here for adoption, and then I'm going to move to the adoption vote.
Yeah, Your Worship, this is Dave Stewart. I just want to ask Mr. Milburn just to comment on any inaccuracies in Mr. Teven's comments, and in particular around the issue around renovations. I think, unfortunately, when we get into a situation where members of the public, rightfully so, want to provide input on a particular issue, it's our incumbent responsibility to make sure that they're at least accurate. And my concern is right now we have information in the North Shore News that is inaccurate. So I just, as we talk about process, also very quickly talk about the accuracy of the statements, because I think that's it's unfair to the public to make comments and not be able to at least respond to those.
I think that the reason why I haven't pressed for that at this time is I thought that some of the comments before the meeting in the actually covered that fairly well. And so there were some inaccuracies on it. Perhaps that's us not communicating the extent of the bylaw. Perhaps that's just people coming to something that they don't feel they've had communicated to them enough. But so I think I'd prefer to leave that aside at this point. I think it's been addressed. And I'd prefer if Mr. Milburn just specifically would just comment on the dates and steps we've taken to get to this point, and then we'll go to the adoption vote. Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Worship. Just to remind Council that this conversation actually began long before the construction bylaw was brought before Council for consideration. The conversation actually began with the Community Energy and Emissions Plan conversation, which involved a series of workshops as well as community engagement. The results of the Community Energy Emissions Plan suggested that Council pursue this approach and move forward in the short and medium term towards achieving the goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our buildings. This is actually a reflection of provincial statute. So the province has asked local governments to move towards the Step Code 5 by 2032 and provided a laddering process for local governments to adopt various energy step code standards. So that's a little bit of background. Now, when it came time to looking at improvements to the energy step code and whether or not to include greenhouse gas emission targets, which the code does not relate to, the code only relates to energy efficiency, We started an engagement process that included talking to our neighbors in late 2018 through 2020. So fellow municipalities on the North Shore to see how they would be so talking to the fellow municipalities on the North Shore who were also looking at implementing similar standards. And then we also spoke to the various builders that actually build buildings in the District of North Vancouver. So our usual clients who work with us on a regular basis, as well as the home builders of Greater Vancouver and the Urban Development Institute who represent the development community. So we were speaking to the folks that prepare the designs and prepare the submissions to try to achieve those energy step code levels. And the results of that consultation is included in tonight's package and was previously provided to council in a report. And certainly we have continued to engage those folks. And what we're recommending is that we continue to speak to them as we look towards implementation, if that is council's wish. So really there's a number of key stakeholders who are directly involved in this process for over a year. And this is really now the culmination of those conversations before council.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, you had your hand up first. Will you be moving it up?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Curran. I'm going to call the question on the motion. If you intend to dissent, you'll probably want to put your audio on now. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, I have that as being Councillors Little, Murray, Bond, Curran, Hanson, back in favor, and Councillor Forbes opposed. Does that match your record?
That does, Your Worship, yes.
Thank you very much.
Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor?
I thought there was going to be a little bit of room for a little bit of talk.
Not at adoption.
Pardon?
Not at adoption, no.
Okay, so I can't make like a 2-sentence comment?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. You're obviously welcome, Councillor Forbes, to go to other means to communicate after the meeting or just not in the meeting. Okay, moving on to item 8.7, which is bylaw 8449, rezoning for 840 St. Denis Avenue. Council, we have a recommendation on the floor, but this is returning from second and third reading. And so I'm going to be looking to members of council for a motion. Someone be moving the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, staff recommendation is moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray, any further comments on the matter?
I can't find my raised hand icon. No, I think this is an appropriate mix of housing in a small lot infill in the Inter-River area, just south of the existing fire hall. I know the property very well, and I think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood. I think they were considerate of the massing, and I really actually liked the way the developer, the architect, presented the drawings and the concept through the public hearing. I would actually like staff to look at that process for how we communicate developments and applications. I thought it was really well laid out. It was very clear. It was very easy to understand. And it sort of went sort of section by section. And I think, you know, the better way of understanding these developments and seeing them laid out clearly helps with community involvement and better understanding drawings and architectural and engineering papers. So I did really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I believe I had Councillor Hanson. You're the seconder on that. Or sorry, was it Councillor Curran? Councillor Hanson. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to vote in favor of this rezoning. Overall, I believe this proposal represents the kind of gentle densification that our communities support. This particular site consists of a large lot, 9,100 square feet, and is currently developed as a single-family home. The proposal is for 3 residential units in 2 buildings, a duplex in the front and a single unit building at the rear. All the units will contain 3 bedrooms. In my view, the proposal is congruent with the other development in the vicinity and the development, the way the block is evolving. The proposal has not met with any kind of public opposition. I do note that the public hearing was not well attended. However, I believe a proposal such as this in this location does have broad public support. I can state that this will represent for me the first time on this council that I have voted in favor of a rezoning for market housing. And I believe this to be a category of development that is broadly supported by our community and will benefit our community. I'm pleased to vote in favor of the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I will be voting in favor of this proposal. I think it's a form of housing that there will be a lot of benefits from adopting more widely in all residential neighborhoods across the district. I can see the benefits of allowing 3 homes instead of 1 or 2 as providing a lot of benefits and opportunities for people to live throughout our community. One comment, and it's not necessarily on the application, but it's a bit more on the process. It does seem like an extraordinary amount of effort to achieve what is effectively a single new home in our community. You know, when I was reading through the public hearing package, there was almost 350 pages of published public staff and consultant and applicant reports required to get this project to a public hearing. The notices were sent out to the neighbors, to which no one responded. There was an open house for this project almost a year and a half ago, to which only 1 person attended. And we had 5 speakers at an hour-long public hearing. And that's all to add a single home in a neighborhood that already has an overwhelming majority of homes that are multifamily. So I think there's definitely a process block here to adding this type of home and these type of home options in neighborhoods across the district. If it takes all that work, hundreds and hundreds of pages of reports, years of public process to add a single home. So that's more of a general comment of mine, but I will be supporting this application.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Back, followed by Councillor Kern. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will also be supporting this project for all the reasons that have been stated. It definitely is the type of gentle density that I certainly appreciate and I think does fit well within so many areas of our community. Yeah, I would echo Councillor Bond's comments on the length and cost of the process for a relatively small development with next to no opposition from the community. Because we do, I think, in my opinion, should be encouraging this type of housing, this type of density in other parts of the community. It will fit in very nicely with the neighboring properties in that area. So yeah, I'm very pleased to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor, actually, sorry, someone dropped their hand off the list.
It was me. I
Councillor
dropped
Kern.
my hand off because
You can't do
said
that.
I was next. Okay.
I rely on that.
Okay, noted. Okay. I am also happy to support this. I think it's been a good process. I actually agree with Councillor Bond and Back about the length of time and just that's something we hear generally is how long the process takes. And so I think that's just something that I'll echo. But I do hope over time, as we get transportation networks working, that we can reduce some of the parking requirements that I think make some of these projects more challenging, especially depending on the location of the project on frequent transit, etc. But generally, yes, I'm much happier to see 3 homes in this space than seeing 1 large home, for example. So I think it's a good move. And I just wanted to say that the applicant was really open to working with community activists, and we have this amazing network of folks in our community that are engineers that are decarbonizing buildings, and they're all kind of coming together just to build a sustainable community because they want to do it. And I think that there's a lot of willingness to do that. We just have to try to work together. So I was really pleased about some of the changes that were made based on some community input and some willingness from both the architect and the designer, because we're ultimately trying to make housing that is affordable as possible while achieving our targets and being very energy efficient. So actually the costs go down, which is not something that that gets communicated, I think, well enough. So I do note that we can, there's a lot more we can do, but very happy to see this move forward.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in light of what we've just passed, unless I missed it, what is this development going to be held now to the bylaw we just passed, or does it have some other? I don't recall being able to find the energy efficiency that it was going to build to.
Mr. Milburn.
Your Worship, with Council's support for the amendments to the construction bylaw, those take effect on July 1st, 2021. So if the building permit is submitted in advance of that date, it wouldn't have to comply with the brand new standards, which only take effect on July 1st. However, I believe the applicant has indicated that they do have some particular measures they outlined in their report and in their presentation, and Mr. Hartford may wish to comment on those if Council wants us to repeat or cover that ground.
Thank you. Mr. Hartford, any comment?
Your Worship, Councillor Forbes, the application is currently required to meet step 3 of the Energy Step Code. As Mr. Milburn noted, under the new provisions starting July 1st, it would be required to meet step 5 or step 3 with a low carbon energy system. As was noted at the public hearing, the applicant has voluntarily indicated that they will include heat pumps in the project and would not rely on natural gas in the project. So I think it's fair to say that in either case, whether they came in before or after July 1st, they would comply with the new construction bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Hartford. Councillor Forbes, back to you.
Thank you. I will be supporting this project as well.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Murray.
I just wanted to add, just maybe if staff can provide in regards to this discussion of energy, some examples of the costs that would be added on to a development such as this one. Councillor Kern suggests this may be a form of affordable housing, and of course affordable is different for everyone. In this example, in my opinion, this will be maybe a premium value as it sits right next to a green belt on a trail system across from a river. So I think those attributes will actually add to the cost versus the energy requirements. And I know Mr. Dwyer had given the example on $1 million build of construction costs, $1 million in construction costs. In order to retain natural gas within a house, it would have been 3% of the construction cost, totaling about $30,000. So I think it's important as we move forward with this discussion on energy that there's something within these reports that identify for the community and for council the type of costs that are being associated with the bylaw that we just passed, certainly in the early days of this discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. So my own comments on the matter, I take Councillor Bond's point. There's a lot of work done to go 1 extra unit. If the limit was 3 and someone wanted to go to 4, there'd obviously be a lot of work. If the limit was 6 and the person wanted to go to 7, there'd be a lot of extra work. The incremental work is always only 1 unit if you only go for 1 unit above. But the amount of work that you have to do, whether you're 1 unit above or 20 units above, is actually not a big step between them, as we've seen in some cases where the FSRs and multifamily have gone up so fairly dramatically. But look at some of the benefits that also generally applies. It also works to encourage property owners to do land assembly to get properly built multifamily in those areas. And in this neighborhood, that's been what's prescribed. And so when we put that roadblock in place, we say, look, on your own, you can only build one with a unit, with a side unit, then there's an incentive for them to negotiate with their neighbors, try to do a land assembly and come up with something a little bit more comprehensive in there. So I wouldn't always look at it as a negative. I'm sure for the extra binder of paperwork they've had to do versus the uplift of several $100,000 on their property value, they're probably fairly happy with the investment of the binder's worth of extra paperwork. But I think that this is a sensitive infill in the area. I think it's fairly independent living and will be fairly cost effective for such a level of independent living. Although, as noted, some of the features in the neighborhood, including the school over the fence, we're definitely going to add to the value of the property. But I still think it's better than if it was a large single family home on this particular property. Obviously, the affordability would be completely different in this situation. So I do think it's a good project and I will be supporting it. I have Councillor Forbes and Curran that put their hands up. So Councillor Forbes, second time speaking.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a comment on costs. I concur with Councillor Murray that we should have costs attached to this because the government says there's only a 3% extra cost for this. And I spoke to someone who works in the industry and they said, they kind of laughed at the 3% and said anywhere between 3 and 6%. So I based a new home at 1.5, and that's a $90,000 additional cost right up front, which might be the difference between somebody buying and not buying. And also the consultant about step 5 has to be at all phases of the designing, all of it. You need a consultant. So there's an expense there too. So there is quite a bit of an initial expense. And what my concern about that was that when we're in COVID-19 and a lot of people have been hurt financially, and we're trying really our best to do affordability, quote, because as Councillor Murray says, affordability is different to different people. To me, it's tied to income. So if somebody's lost their job during COVID or they've been laid off for several months, I don't think they're in a position to be looking at an extra $90,000 for construction. So that was my concern, is the additional cost and how it affects what we can do for affordability. So I think it's really good if we do put costs in these reports coming forward.
And also noting that if somebody has lost their job, they're probably not going to be doing a build new from scratch after this date, because that would cost them probably about $800,000 to construct new on a normal house in the district. Councillor Curran.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that it is really important that we make policy based on science and data, and we use evidence rather than fear. That seems to be the friend of the status quo. And so it is really encouraging to talk to people who have built these buildings many years ago in our region at a lower cost. And so I think that it is really important that we actually speak to the folks who have built these buildings. And recognize again why we do this work, that it is a co-benefit is going to be saving money and creating jobs, but we do it because climate change is costing lives. And so we always have to frame it around human health and planetary health upon which we rely. So COVID actually is connected to the climate emergency. And so to miss sight of why we're doing this, it's because carbon is a pollutant and we need to reduce it. And so these are policies that we can implement to reduce carbon, which is what collectively we need to do to have a livable planet. So I just don't want to lose sight of that when we get into percentages about the urgency of this work that we need to undertake.
Your Worship.
Councillor Forbes, have you spoken 2 times already?
Nope.
Okay, just once. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's only once.
No, it's been twice, Your Worship.
So this is your third time. This would be your third time speaking, Councillor. And I guess what I'm concerned about is that it seems to be we're moving into debating the last item rather than talking specifically about this.
I just want to answer something that Councillor Kern has said.
Councillor Forbes, if you're going to make a comment, can you please make it specific to the proposal that's on the floor tonight? This is your third opportunity to speak.
When I was looking into the cost that might be attached to this project, it was explained to me by somebody working in the industry. It was not drawn out of thin air.
Right,
Thank
but
you.
Mr. Hartford has already said that they intend to do this anyway. So, okay, members of council, I see no further speakers at this time. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary minded, say nay. Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to rule that that is unanimous consent for item.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8.8. This is bylaws 8451 and 8452 non-market housing project at 267 Orwell Street. I know, again, this is returning from a public hearing. Are there any comments from staff? See, Mr. Hartford, you're still on the line about this project at this point, but
Your Worship, I have no specific comments, and you need to be careful not to add new information.
I get that we don't normally, straight back from public hearing, we're going to go straight to second and third with no further input. Got it. Okay, I'm looking for a raised hand. Council, would somebody like to make a recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation.
The recommendation has been moved by Councillor Hanson and believe it's seconded by Councillor Murray. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very pleased to be supporting this rezoning, which I believe to be an important step in the district's meeting the needs of affordable housing in the district. This was a site identified as being appropriate for non-market rental housing during the last council. And I, in fact, advocated for the use of this very site for this very purpose at this time. And therefore, it is obviously pleasing to me to see that come forward and reach this stage. The proposal calls for a 6-story non-market rental building with 90 units. These units range in size from 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms. The proposal calls for the units to be administered by the Sanford Housing Society. The rents will vary, with 20% or 18 units being rented to persons on social assistance. 50% will be rented to people whose incomes fall below the household income limits, which currently range from $51,000 to $90,000, depending on whether it's a 1 or 3 bedroom unit. And then the remaining 30% of the units will be rented to persons with incomes ranging from $71,000 to $104,000 and slightly below market rents in the range of $1,650 to $2,450. I can say that each of these 90 units is badly needed by our community. And while I would have liked to see greater affordability, I would have liked to have seen more of the units aimed at lower incomes, I recognize this to be a sustainable model. These levels of affordability are achieved, first of all, by the district providing the land on a long-term lease at $10 a year, by the district waiving building permit fees, development cost charges, and providing property tax exemptions, and the province as well is providing financial support. As for public input, there were 450 notices sent out to the neighborhood. There was not a lot of response, but the feedback is generally positive. Again, the public hearing was not well attended. However, I believe, based on my knowledge of this community, that projects of this kind have broad public support. I note the proximity to transit and amenities. This is, in my view, exactly the category of site where we should be placing this category of housing. I fully support this project in this location, and perhaps most importantly, I look forward to other such proposals coming forward soon so that we can continue to meet the housing needs of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I can't call it my agenda. I'm trying to call it up off the website. I'm having technical difficulties too. Yeah, I will support this project, and I concur with Councillor Hanson. It's too bad that the entire project couldn't be based on a social income perspective, much like our Lions projects that have been built over the decades do. So, I would hope that as we move forward with additional affordable housing, that we will look at a larger component for those people that really need to be lifted up. Because there is rental housing being built in the community, and it's not, when I talk about the community, I look at the North Shore, not just the district, because we've got 2 other municipalities that are building housing, and First Nations that are building housing as well. Throughout the development of these town centers, my concerns have always been the displacement of those in existing rental housing, which unfortunately has happened far too often in the district, and the amount of construction all at once. And certainly this is the epicenter of construction right now. In fact, this street is probably the epicenter of construction because of the Eastern Lands Fibs Exchange, the highway interchange work that is just beginning, and the projects that are still underway on Oxford. So it is going to be a very, very challenging build from a construction standpoint. And I've not been impressed with how we've managed construction, throughout the district over the years, especially when we were approving every application that came across our desks. So, I've been speaking out about that for a number of years, and I think that has been a challenge for the community as well, that the management of these projects don't happen in silos, that they are all knitted together, and we understand how movement is going to happen throughout the municipality. And that will continue to be a grave challenge for our construction management position. But during the public hearing, and I'm sorry that this item was not raised during the initial reading on this project, and I think Mayor Little, you actually had identified it as the access into this project off Bond Street. And I think this is really something that we have to look forward to with the remaining projects, certainly in Lynn Creek, but the removal of the lanes. And the access to this project and the one to the west is going to be coming off of Bond Street. And the previous councils rezoned properties. And I guess we can talk about the fact that it was done to increase the density, removal of the lanes. The developers were purchasing lanes that were the property of the district. Under the approval of rezoning, they would acquire those lanes, and new traffic circulation was implemented. And I just find it, from a livability standard for those future developments on Bond Street, that 2 projects will be accessing down a single road on top of all the other projects that are being considered on Bond. I'm disappointed that council is not willing to walk the talk in regards to, one of the largest polluters, the car in these town centers. And, I think it was when we rezoned Lynn Creek, it was, why would we put that many parking spots next to an apartment block, next to a bus depot? And we're additionally adding even more cars to the area. where we didn't add any cars really was the seniors care center on the corner, which is going to be having this rotation of families and visitors and shift workers coming into that building. There's 36 parking spots in that building. So I just really feel like we haven't gotten our head around the parking issue and the build out and how this area is going to evolve. And I'm not sure if at this late point that the access could be looked at, because I just feel like it's so problematic for that street that is yet to be considered in regards to any level of livability when they are hosting access for two buildings that are not even on their street. So
thank you.
If I could have comment from staff in regards to this, I'd appreciate it.
Is there a member around the lane access, Mr. Hartford?
Your Worship and Councillor Muri, I would prefer to only comment on what was mentioned at the public hearing, which is to clarify that the access is shared and it is from Bond Street.
But it's not new information. We raised this at the public hearing, the issue of the access.
That's the response.
So can I have, like, you know, this was all public information. This is nothing new. We did raise this issue.
Mr. Milburn, do you have a comment and then
like
move on?
Your Worship, the reason why Mr. Hartford is referring to not wanting to introduce information is well known, but I simply would note that if additional information is requested from staff, we typically run that information by our solicitor to ensure that we don't jeopardize the public process that's occurred so far. And I think the question from Councillor Muri is that she'd like to explore alternatives to see if there is some other better way that we could maybe look at the access configuration for this neighborhood, which is part of an ongoing conversation that we have for projects as we see them come forward and evolve. So that conversation could still occur even with this development proceeding.
Okay, so that will help me feel more certain, at least considering a secondary access of some sort to remove the type of traffic that will be created on a street that is not actually hosting.
We were at about 6.5 minutes for your comments before the staff portion came in. I agree with you. We need to have a broader, longer conversation about lane access and how people access and egress. Also, our own transportation plans for turning on and off of Mountain Highway and what gap studies could be done in that space. But I think
well, there's my total amount of time, Mayor Little. So I think we need to get you a clock. I think we need to get you a clock so we can get a handle on these speaking times.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Muri. I've got Councillor Curran next.
Thank you. I will be supporting this project. I'm pleased to see a project that has 20% for people on fixed incomes, and the other 80% of the building is also rent geared to income or housing income limits. I will say that it's disappointing that this council actually did, I believe, support doing something really innovative, a 12-story mass timber, and it just shows, from my experience trying to work through the system, how many flaws there are in the system. And I think that starts from BC Housing's procurement, like what they require. And if they required what I think we need to do, which is 21st century buildings instead of 20th century buildings, I think we'd be able to deliver better housing, meet our climate targets, and really put human health at the center of it, because there are concerns in a place like this that is on a transit route, making sure that the air quality is that the building is clean, and that the space is green. And I know we're going to do a lot in this area, so I think it is a good location. I have concerns about a floodplain as well. That is a floodplain, and I think that I still don't have the information that I need from staff on that, but it's something we're working on. So I think that that's just something the public has to be aware of. But I know that Clean BC, our provincial climate policy, there is no alignment with what we're doing with buildings. And so I just want to try to close some of those gaps and identifying the systemic barriers to us doing the innovative projects that we need. Because I think in this case, I was brand new and I was like, we're going to deliver this project. And I just hit barrier after barrier after barrier. And so really identifying what those are and pushing past them, I think will allow us to deliver projects. I appreciate that the applicant has worked to on the energy, and I appreciate the challenges that exist within our current energy system as well. And that's another systemic barrier that we can push past. So I think this has really helped inform what specific barriers exist, and so we can keep pushing through them. But in the meantime, we have the opportunity to deliver some housing in our community that's in a great location and will become greater over time, that can be less car centric because of amenities being close by, because of its proximity to transit. So I'm pleased to see that. And this was a project that was initiated by the previous council. So I appreciate that I came in late into the process, but I think it would be great if the procurement process for BC Housing actually required passive level, which has been also delivered less than a traditional build in some cases. And then of course the operating costs for the tenants are zero or very, very low. And so I think that's an important thing for us as a council and staff to really champion, to say like, we want to build these projects in the municipality that are delivering the best projects that we can for now and for the future. So I just challenge the fact that the province is and the federal government are now paying lots of money for retrofits, and at the same time we're building retrofits. So just to my mind, that makes no sense. And we have to look at things from a long-term cost perspective, not just the short-term costs. And I know, Mayor Little, you've pointed out some of the challenges with capital costs up front that prohibit these long-term planning decisions to happen. So I think, yeah, that's it. I'm pleased to see it moving forward. And I wish it was modular so that it could happen quickly. But what is the time frame for shovel in the ground to completion? Are we allowed to have that information? I already said I supported it. So.
Mr. Hartford.
Again, Your Worship, the timeline was not discussed at the public hearing. What I can offer is that the applicant team are very anxious to move forward quickly, and staff will do everything they can to expedite construction.
It's the best answer we can get at the moment. So thank you very much, Mr. Hartford. Thank you, Councillor Curran. Next up, I have Councillors Bond and Back. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'm going to add my enthusiastic support for this project and echo many of the comments that Councillor Hanson made. He did a very good overview of the details of the project, and like him, I also advocated for this site while I was on the last council. So I'm very glad to see it looks like a majority of this council will support this project that was initiated by the last council. I think that the applicant here, and we have to remember this is a non-profit applicant applying for a basically 70% social housing project on district-owned land, did a Herculean effort in bringing this project forward. It's one of the most comprehensive public engagement strategies that I've seen for any rezoning application, and saying that for a nonprofit to do this, I think deserves a lot of commendation, but also it shouldn't be necessary for a nonprofit to go that far to engage the public and convince council that this type of housing is needed. I think perhaps maybe they were nervous because of council's previous decisions to reject proposals at the Delbrook lands, which we've since revised, and Burr Place. But I think, you know, I live 2 kilometers away from the project, far outside our general notification boundaries for public input. And my neighbors and I got a leaflet in the mail advertising. They had a full-on website with a frequently asked questions section of 59 different questions. They went around to the local community associations and the community association area network and did a full presentation explaining not just their project, but how the funding is allocated from the government, what the requirements are for the social housing components, which is 20% for those on income assistance and 50% rent geared to income. So this is an amazing amount of effort, and I want to commend them on doing that, but also want to insist that that should not be necessary. It should not be a standard, such a high standard to set to deliver this type of housing, which is desperately needed in our community. I'll make a few comments on the parking. This will be an anecdote, and Councillor Curran always says we should base our information based on evidence and science, and I have that to support my position as well. But I live in a multifamily area. We have probably 450 parking stalls that all access a single road by a single driveway, and at least from my experience, there's no Carmageddon coming from having two projects with 170 to 180 homes accessing a single road from a single driveway. So I think generally this is quite aggressive on parking reductions, which I think we need to do in the district, especially in areas that have lower income housing to provide some affordability, but also have access to transit and other services. I also think we shouldn't be putting the burden on reducing driving simply on those in new areas. That's a burden that we all share across the entire district, is reducing the amount of driving and reducing the amount of vehicles that we use, and it shouldn't necessarily be wielded as a opposition to providing this new and desperately needing housing. So very much in support. The applicant team has done an amazing job. It's taken a long time. I know there's been some constraints from the province on that, but I think that the team has done a lot of work on this, and I would be happy to see this move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I too wholeheartedly support this project. And as Councillor Bond has acknowledged, it's been a long process, and I do thank the previous council for getting the ball rolling on this. And I think this is something that we can be excited about as a community. This is the type of development that we know there is a strong need for. And it's in the type of location I think that's perfect for this kind of housing. I note that it's transit oriented, being next to Phibbs and on the B line, but also there is going to be 135 bike storage spaces as part of this project, and improved bike facilities there along Orwell, which the community will benefit from. So I also like to note that there's some larger homes there with the 3-bedroom units, 11 of them as part of this project as well, to cater to more families. So overall, I think this is an excellent project that's taken a very long time to get to this stage, but I'm pleased to see it have broad support here tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Just my own comments on the matter. I share a lot of views of council on this. I think it is definitely a project where the merits are such that it's fairly undeniable that there's benefit to the community back in this. There's obviously some challenges in the neighborhood with parking. This will eat up the park and ride flexibility that we had next to Phibbs Exchange, and I think that will come as a shock to many people because that parking lot is full on a daily basis and full overnight with neighbors of the project, and so that is still a hurdle to be crossed. This one seems like it's been taken forever because in part it was really approved on the back of a napkin at a very, very early stage in its development. And one of the reasons why it's had so many delays along the way is that the designs have been rejected by the provinces not meeting their codes for the long-term maintenance of the building. The earlier iterations were too fancy in the views of the province for a BC housing project, and so they kept sending it back to try to make the form simpler so that maintenance over the life of the building would be more manageable. And so that's largely the reason why there had been delays on this space. The district had been supportive. I still think that in future, I think that these projects will all go smoother if the district is the applicant for rezoning in the process, not the nonprofit. Those groups should be able to talk about all the wonderful things that Terra Housing or the different partners do for their projects, and we should be the ones that are out front and making the changes with the community, dealing with issues of access, egress, form massing, and all of the other things before we bring the partner in to talk about the amazing things that they do. I think it will speed up projects in the future. That was the approach we took with Delbrook in the end. And obviously with our discussion about social and affordable housing opportunities, I expect to see us proactively zoning properties where we're the owner and looking for deep dive affordable housing. The affordability profile on this building, I think is very good. Obviously, if you want to provide the very deep dive affordable housing mixed into the community as well, but we also have a very underserved, for lack of a better term, working marginalized people that are trying to get to work and aren't making enough money to make it work. And a lot of those people are reliant on transit as an opportunity, and this building creates an excellent opportunity for that. So I don't have an issue with there being middle income affordable units in this space as well. I think we have a need in that area, and certainly the services that are in and around this space will help support those people as well. I am supportive of this project, and I want to thank staff and the applicants for going through all of the hurdles to get this brought forward. But I think this is the kind of use that our community sees for district-owned land and for developments going forward. Councillor Back, your hand is still up. Are you speaking a second time, or is that just?
Sorry, Your Worship. It's down now.
All right. Any other members of council wishing to address the matter? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question on the matter. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary or opposed, say nay. Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to declare that this is unanimous support for item 8.8.
That's what I have as well, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Council. Thank you, staff, for directing us through this process. We do appreciate it. Council, the next item that we have up is the financial plan amendment. And I did have a comment before we have this discussion. The report has recommended first, second, and third reading on this item. We are permitted on these types of financial plans to pursue adoption on the same evening that we do first, second, and third. We are required for this financial plan amendment to adopt by the end of the calendar year. And so our challenge is, as this is the last scheduled public regular council meeting, is if we do not pass adoption on this item tonight, then we will have to create a special meeting between here and the end of the year to consider the matters. All of the items that are in the financial plan amendment represent council priorities, and so they have had public discussions about them already leading up to this point. And so even though the original report only recommended first, second, and third, I've asked the clerk to update it here to be first, second, third, and then a second motion that it be adopted subsequently. And so that's what I'm asking for. I don't know if council, I'll be making that motion. Both motions, Mr.
Point
Clerk.
of order.
Yes, Councillor Curran.
I've received like mixed information about this today, but I think just because to err on the side of safety, because there is an item on this financial plan that I did recuse myself from, would this be the appropriate time?
That is always your prerogative to recuse yourself from any item.
Yeah.
And,
well, given I'm going to, because it's not clear, so I'm going to err on the side of stepping away. So just to be clear, I have a business on Gallant Avenue. I recused myself from the Gallant Avenue project. It's on the financial amendment. And so that made me question if it, so just to be safe, I'm going to recuse myself. Is that the information
accepted.
that you need?
Yep.
Okay,
that's
bye.
It. So as this is a virtual meeting, Councillor Curran is going to move to a lobby area, and then Councillor Curran will be brought back into the meeting once we have completed this item. Mr. Stewart, are you getting my attention there?
Yeah, just a quick comment, Worship. This is really housekeeping. And if for some reason council doesn't want to adopt it tonight, I will be scheduling a special meeting before the end of the year to adopt it, which we're required to do by law.
I thought you were going to say on Christmas Eve, something to tighten the screws.
No, I don't think so. Even the Grinch like me would do that.
Got to pass the mantle on to someone. Okay, so I've moved it. Is there a seconder for Seconded by Councillor Muri. So I don't really have any further comments. This all represents priorities expressed by us and projects that are approved by council. And so I will be supportive. Councillor Muri, any further comment?
Nothing.
I see no further speakers at this time. So I'm going to call a question on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, is that sufficient for both motions, or did you need us to vote on them separately?
I know, Your Worship, that's fine. We just separated it into 2 clauses to make it clear, 3 readings and adoption. All in one fell swoop is perfectly fine.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Can we please welcome Councillor Curran back into the meeting?
Yes, Your Worship, we'll do that. And
I'm
we'll just
back.
Good, and it's timely because we're going to be discussing your report. So Council, we're moving on to item 8.13. This is the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. This is a report from Councillor Curran. Councillor Curran, would you like to move your report and make the initial comments?
I will happily move my report.
I'd be happy to second your report.
Thank you. So you always, am I on? Okay.
Good.
So I guess I'll just start by saying that I want to recognize that oppression takes on many forms. So I want to recognize that this plan, if council supports it, which I hope we will, must include people who experience oppression and exclusion, which would include women, LGBTQIA, Two-Spirit plus people with disabilities. So I really felt like it was important to name white supremacy and racism specifically because there has been concern that organizations and governments are rushing straight to inclusivity and diversity, which feel like safer words for us to use without actually addressing the underlying root causes of marginalization and oppression. So I just want to recognize that this work is lifelong. We're not always going to get this right. I personally have not always gotten it right. I will get it wrong again. I think it requires really just the commitment to the community, to the society at large, to approach this work with humility and with empathy. And this tonight is not the plan. This isn't how we're going to address systemic racism and oppression. It's a commitment to take action. So really all I'm asking for is a commitment to take action. I have found that whiteness tends to center itself, and this work calls on all of us to decenter ourselves. And so I wanted to share a quote. Janaya Future Khan, a storyteller, activist, and international ambassador for Black Lives Matter, said, "Every time I hear privilege, many people thought I was saying they had never been through anything in their life. And it is such a human thing to be protective of the story of yourself, that which has shaped the person you've become. But privilege isn't about what you've gone through. It's about what you haven't had to go through." And right now we are in a time that is calling on all of us to learn the stories we didn't know. I know most members of council were recently in attendance at the Metro Vancouver. They did a forum on systemic racism, and I think that was, I've heard from members of council that that was quite powerful and informative and humbling to hear. In June, Squamish Nation issued the following statement in solidarity with the movement for racial justice. Protests across the United States and Canada have many of us thinking of our own experiences with racism. Much like the United States, deep-rooted systemic racism exists in Canada. Racism has been institutionalized and weaponized, allowing for unconscionable words and actions to become the norm rather than the exception. We need a commitment to justice. We need to have difficult conversations about race. We need to stand up to racism when we see it or hear it. We need BIPOC, non-BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, allies to step up and use their platform and their privilege to elevate the voices and issues of BIPOC people and communities. So that's really what I felt called upon to do, was to use my privilege that I have to hopefully get the council supportive of making it clear to staff and to our community that we hear you, we see you, and we feel that we need to take action. I also wanted to call out the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, which released its findings and 94 calls to action regarding reconciliation 5 years ago. So it's been 5 years since that report came out. I do encourage every member of council and the community and staff to read through the Truth and Reconciliation and to read into the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit LGBTQ QIA report, because you can't be untouched by that. And we need to commit to learning and sharing the real history of these lands. So I hope that each member of council will join us in this important step. We do have, I have reached out to folks in the community. I feel like there's good support for this. White supremacy, which is the system that we live in, is a system that is upheld through silence, and it's upheld when we choose our comfort over justice. And that's something that I have personally been sitting with as a white woman. This system is mine to dismantle from within. And I just want to acknowledge that it's deeply personal work and that it's lifelong, but collectively we can come together. So I'll close with a quote from James Baldwin that said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." So I think that this time, we're late, of course, but we need to move forward together, and I hope that council will support this framework. I'm happy to answer any specific questions about it, but it seemed like a good way to join other municipalities that are working towards the same shared goal of dismantling oppression. So this, again, is not what we're going to do or even how we're going to do it. It's that we're committing to doing it. So that is the ask today to you, council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curran. And I was glad to participate in the Metro Vancouver program, as well as we did have another one that was organized not by the Multicultural Society, but an Inclusion and Diversity group, and it featured a speaker who was Val Jerome, Harry Jerome's sister, talking about very, very bluntly about what it was like growing up as a person of color in the district of North Vancouver, or sorry, the city of North Vancouver, but over on Lloyd Street, and how they had rocks thrown at them when they went to school, how they had their neighbors tried to get the police to arrest them, try to get them evicted from the housing that they were in. The community was set against them entirely. And like, you know, we've come a long way, but we also have a very long way to go when it comes to being inclusive in our communities. And I'm very glad that you mentioned in your comments, Councillor Curran, about persons with disabilities, because I know that a lot of the focus right now is on BIPOC, as it should be, and some of the other terms and labels and groups, but there's no question that there are other people that are left out of even that discussion who definitely have been marginalized in our society. And so I'm glad that you took the approach that it's very, very broad. I did want to just point out in this, I mean, a lot of this is being coordinated through UNESCO, and I want to draw people's attention to item 470 of the agenda, page 470 of the agenda, but within the report on page 8 of the guide for new and established members for it. I did just want to read this into the record because I think that this is an important point, which is the municipality is a guardian that respects the public interest. These are the common commitments that membership expects. 1, increasing vigilance against systemic and individual discrimination. 2, monitoring discrimination in the municipality and taking action to address it. 3, supporting individuals who experience discrimination. 4, providing police services that are exemplary institutions for fighting discrimination. The next group is the municipality is an organization that upholds human rights. 5, providing equal opportunity as municipal employer, service provider, and contractor. 6, supporting measures that promote equity in the labor market. 7, challenging discrimination and promoting diversity and equal opportunities in housing. The next group is the municipality is a community that promotes diversity. And number 8 is involving citizens by giving them a voice in anti-racism initiatives and decision-making. 9, challenging discrimination and promoting diversity and equal opportunity in education and other forms of learning. And the last goal or common commitment, number 10, promoting the respect, knowledge, and appreciation of cultural diversity and inclusion of Indigenous and racialized communities in the cultural fabric of the municipality. These goals, if they do come into collision with district institutions or district services, then it's the district institutions or services that have to be reviewed. That's my view, and that's why I will be supporting this initiative here today. Next up, I have Councillors Hanson and Back. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I'd like to thank Councillor Curran for bringing this motion forward, that the North Vancouver District join the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities and that we develop an action plan to address racism, discrimination, and social inclusion. I'd like to thank Councillor Curran as well for her words in moving the motion, and Mayor Little for your support for the motion, and you're bringing to our attention the detailed action steps and values. Well, I guess not action steps, but values that are set out in the Coalition's mission statement. I was one of the North Vancouver District councillors who attended Metro Vancouver's Regional Forum on Systemic Racism. I attended on November the 28th, 2020. And I can say that I found that presentation very insightful, at times disturbing, certainly at times emotional, but certainly very insightful as to the current state of play of racism and discrimination in British Columbia. We saw in that a number of speakers representing a range of different perspectives on racism. And it opened my eyes as to what still exists. As you say, Mayor Little, we've come a long ways, but there still is a lot of discrimination, racism, and discrimination against other groups, persons with disabilities, and these other groups that are important to us because they're all part of our community and they all deserve our respect and support. And I think as individuals, we all feel that. We strive to include and be supportive, but the presentation on systemic racism certainly brought to my attention that an awful lot more still needs to be done. And I believe that joining this coalition and developing an action plan is a reasonable step towards making a commitment to address these important issues. The Metro Vancouver Forum opened my eyes very specifically as to the types of discrimination and racism that continue to be tolerated. And I spent some time after that presentation reflecting on the places that I continue to see racism and other forms of discrimination in my life. Simply put, we can and must do better. It's a value that all of us share. It's a goal that all of us seek to achieve as a society, as a community. And this is a practical step, this coalition and the idea that we're going to develop an action plan is a practical step to taking action on something that I know all of us feel strongly about and that is important to us. So I'm very pleased to support the motion. I thank Councillor Curran for bringing it to this stage. And I think all of us look forward to being part of a further solution of racism and discrimination in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillors Back and Murray. Councillor Back, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just getting my hand lowered in time this time. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Curran, for bringing this forward, and to all of you who have spoken before me and have had very thoughtful comments on this. I too am going to be very much in support of this recommendation here tonight. I know we've all talked about the most recent presentations by Metro Vancouver on this issue, and it's top of mind. So I'm going to mention a couple of things that stood out for me as well in listening to that presentation by Dr. Handel Wright from UBC. You know, he said that, you know, racism is there's often an attitude that, you know, racism doesn't really exist that much in this country. Well, and the reality is it certainly does, and you don't have to look very far to see it, and in very obvious forms and more subtle forms. One of the other things he talked about is anti-racism allyship and what it means to be a good ally. And one of the things is being explicit, helping everyone to see the oppressed are not alone. And I think being explicit is what we're doing by supporting this motion here tonight. When I listened to that presentation, like Councillor Hanson, I was thinking afterwards about some questions, being in this role as a councillor in the district. And I asked myself how often we're actually looking at issues that our community faces through the lens of race. Are we engaging specifically with Black, Indigenous, and persons of color often enough on enough issues? Are we as an organization taking an active enough position to be anti-racist? And how can we make this a North Shore wide initiative? So I think this recommendation here tonight that Councillor Curran's brought forward will allow us to really start this conversation, and recognizing that, you know, there already are a lot of great initiatives happening on this topic by other organizations across the North Shore, and we will be joining them by making this statement here tonight. And I think that it'll be great for us to be leaders and to be hopefully the first North Shore municipality to join the coalition of inclusive municipalities. So yeah, very happy to support this. Thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Thank you. I think Lions Bay beat us. We'll include them as North Shore on this one, but thank you very much, Councillor, back for your comments. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and I'll absolutely be supporting this with the rest of my colleagues. And I would hate to, well, first of all, I'd be interested in sort of how what the next steps are going to be once we pass this. Councillor Curran has said that this is an ask. We'll be looking at an action plan. How can we look at this across the North Shore? We are one community. We're a diverse community. How can we be working with our neighboring municipalities, West Van and the City of North Vancouver, and how can we be taking this opportunity to create an opportunity for discussion within the community? So often we'll pass these kinds of initiatives, and then, you know, we may not see it for months, or you know, what are the next steps? So maybe I ask Mr. Stewart to comment on where we go from here once this is passed, how we can include the other two municipalities in this broader discussion, and how we can create an opportunity for an inclusive discussion amongst our residents and the members of our community. So what would that process look like going forward?
Mr. Stewart?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, that's what we need to, yeah.
No, I'm being flippant about that, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's one thing to say that we're going to join a coalition, which requires actually community engagement before you make that commitment. It's another thing to make a commitment to reconciliation, and there are some wonderful, wonderful principles which we all can follow. As a CIO, I'm going to be bucking the trend here. I generally never recommend that council accepts or goes along with an idea that we're going to adopt it into a group, or we're going to adopt into a set of principles without fully understanding the consequences for the municipality, what the intent is for the municipality, and having some consensus. So if council passes this tonight, the first thing I'm going to do is arrange a workshop in January to say, what exactly did you mean? because individual councillors may have a very, very different perspective about all these things. And at the end of the day, it's a collective decision that we make that says we're going to do, not just aspire to do something, but actually do something. And so, irrespective of what you do on this particular motion, I'm going to be taking this to a workshop in January or February and say, okay, well, that's nice. We've made that commitment. What is that going to mean? As a very pragmatic measure, what is that going to mean? What are you prepared to do, council? What are you prepared to spend on this? And I think that conversation needs to be had. But I'm not suggesting that we not pass this motion, but I'm just suggesting that we really need to have a good conversation about, in a practical way, what that means that you're willing to do as a council and what we can do as a staff.
I also took part in the discussion, the Metro Vancouver Forum. I thought it was excellent. There were 4 forums offered across the region, and I think Mayor Little and I were in the one on the, I think it was the 21st. I think Councillor Hanson was the 28th. Ours was the North Shore one. And the stories were moving. And I think as Canadians, you know, we've certainly been looking to our neighbors to the south and watching in horror what has been going on in their cities. And, you know, I guess you feel when we have, I mean, 4 years ago, we were saying goodbye to the first African-American president of the United States. You know, those 8 years was an incredible time for the US. And then so quickly we look to what's happening now and what has gone on over the last 4 years. And yeah, it's a conversation that we need to have. It's an emotional conversation, and it's a difficult conversation, and but it's one that we need to have, and we need to embrace it, and we need to go forward, and we need to do better. And so I look forward to this community discussion, and I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I was just going to make one further comment on this. I mean, Councillor Bond specifically addressed the issue, sorry, Councillor Back specifically addressed the issue of overt versus subtle racism and discrimination in our community. And I was at a community barbecue in a neighborhood, and it was right while all of the our land prices were all going through the roof in the community. And I remember a handful of people raising the issue that well, they had sold and they were waiting for their property transfer. They took great pride that they had made sure that the person who they sold to was going to be a good fit to the community. That it was someone who was, you know, going to be a family person. They'd definitely be a good fit. And so while I should be making friends at those events and influencing people in a positive way, I asked the question, isn't that discrimination? You know, if you aren't taking the top dollar in the price because someone doesn't fit your idea of what might fit in the community, then you're discriminating against them. You may be making someone pay too much because of their race, or too much because they don't fit your age profile that you think is good for the community, or too much to be able to fit into your category of bias for the neighborhood. I wasn't going to make many friends at that barbecue, but I think it does suggest that I don't think we know how to articulate what subtle discrimination is. And if you decide to not take the top offer for your house because you think the person might not be a good fit, then you're participating in the problem. And so I think we do need to have this discussion, because people were pridefully saying what they had done to manipulate the process to make sure the person would be right for the community. And in the end, I think all they were doing was basically putting their bias into play. And so it's going to take many forms, subtle and overt, as Councillor Back said. But I do think that we have a responsibility to articulate those concerns specific to the District of North Vancouver. So I'm supportive. I think I see Councillor Bond. I think you fired your hand up there.
Yeah, just something you said, Mayor Little, the story you're relating kind of brought something to my mind, and it is about the overt versus the I'd say even internalized and externalized forms of racism and oppression that we see in the community. And I think, as you mentioned, things have come a long way since 50 or 60 or 70 years ago, and we see a lot less of that individual directed racism, those forms of racism in our communities. But a lot of the policies and the structures and the institutions that we still have in our communities were constructed during that time or prior to that time. And that's where a lot of these systemic issues come from, is because we have not examined those institutions and those policies in this framework. And one thing that comes to mind right now is zoning. Originally zoning, some of the original intents of zoning were to separate the meat rendering plant from someone's home, and those are good uses. But zoning got used when laws were passed to eliminate overt racism in forms of banning Black people from certain communities. Zoning got used as a overt, or what's the opposite? It was used as a tool to enact the same types of policies, but through a different way. And so I think there's a lot of things that we as a local government, a lot of the institutions and bylaws that we rely on, that really need to have a very close attention and unpacking of how those came into play and what needs to change in order to make sure that we are not just kind of neutral, because you can't be neutral, as Councillor Curran said, as to look at those policies through an anti-racism lens. So I think that's important. We all have, I think, our council is all visibly white, so we all have a lot of personal work that we need to do to unpack a lot of that internalized racism growing up in a system that we have. But we also have, as elected leaders, have the responsibility to set this path and this plan forward for our community to make sure that we are addressing those systematic barriers as well. So I think that, to Mr. Stewart's point of moving forward, Councillor Curran has included the toolkit and the guide for new member municipalities in the report. It's a linked attachment, and it's got about 55 pages. So I think that would be a good forum to start in a workshop and kind of putting a work plan together for this. It does say that we do need to, before we officially adopt or join the coalition, we do need that stakeholder engagement and that community consultation. So I think there is a lot of work ahead of us here, but signaling the intent tonight that this is the direction that we have, that we are taking a stand to be an anti-racist and anti-discriminatory municipality, and that we will be working and planning for a long time to make that a reality, to remove those systemic barriers from Black people, from Indigenous people, from people with disabilities. I think that's a strong stand, and we need to make that stand tonight, and I support this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bond. I see no further speakers on this matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Okay, hearing none opposed, Mr. Clerk, I will rule that is unanimous consent. Mr. Stewart, you've popped your head back up from the mountains there. What's something I can help you with?
No, we'll have a workshop with council.
I think
talk about next steps, and I popped my head up because I just want to speak to something at the manager's update, which I'll do.
Yeah, and I think that workshop piece does make the most sense. I mean, this is two-pronged. This is one, internal, inward looking at our institutions and operations, but then there's also promoting anti-racism within our community. And so having a public workshop, having a discussion about what this is going to look like is completely appropriate in my view. So
yeah, and I would view a dedicated workshop on that for as many hours as we take to go through the issue, because there's lots of issues there.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Okay, moving on to reports. Mr. Stewart, you said you had a report?
Well, I just wanted to mention, Your Worship, that we've started to implement the solid waste changes to the bylaw. And we'll probably be coming back to council in January with some small tweaks to the bylaw, which just reflect some very pragmatic issues which residents have raised with us. So I just wanted to let you know and the community know that we are listening. We do care. We want to have a system that works. And so we'll be coming back to council with maybe some ideas on some fairly minor, but some important to some people impacts on that bylaw.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other members of council wishing to make a report tonight? Councillor Back.
Your Worship, I just wanted to acknowledge, as this is the last regular council meeting of the year, just wanted to acknowledge that this has been a year like no other, and the holiday season is going to look different as well this year. And I just wanted to say that I'm so proud of the way that the community has risen to the challenges that this year has brought, from everyone working on the front lines of this pandemic. Those people that never had working from home as an option and were out there keeping us safe, healthy, and fed over the last 9 months. Thank you. And also just to all of the great organizations who've had to find new ways of doing things over the last 9 months, including our own organization. And so I just wanted to say thank you to all of the district staff, who I think have done a really exceptional job in navigating the municipality through the last 9 months as well, and keeping the day-to-day operations of the municipality running fairly seamlessly. And I'm really proud of the way that the district has responded. So just in closing, just going to say that it is going to be a very different kind of holiday season. And while we all may be in our bubbles and apart from one another physically, I would encourage our residents just to continue to stay connected in virtual ways, and check in on people that you're thinking about and let them know that you care about them, because I'm hopeful that the new year is going to look brighter and we'll all get to the other side of the pandemic together. But just wanted to wish every one of you on council and the community a happy holiday season.
Well said, Councillor Back. Could I just also add that now that we've seen our medical health officer, Dr. Henry, extend this order to January 8th, that our local businesses really need some support. You know, I think there's been a campaign out there to shop local, and if this was ever a year to do it, this is it. A lot of them are really struggling, and so if we can, you know, encourage our friends and our neighbors and on our social media accounts to get out there and support those little businesses that work really hard all year round, I think that would be a great gift. And also those that are less fortunate, our Christmas bureaus and all of the charities in the community that are collecting donations. I know in our family, you know, the big Christmas dinners are not happening this year. We're all staying with our immediate family, and I think it's a great opportunity for those of us that can give, maybe to give a little bit more this year. So I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas too, and a Happy New Year. And thanks to staff for helping us get through this, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Any other members of council wishing to make a report?
Your Worship, I have a little game that I play with my staff. Every day we have a Teams meeting, which is say, what is my background?
I was going to guess Strachan on Cyprus.
You got, well, no, it's actually North Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
That Crown Mountain?
Yeah, it's up past Seymour. Anyway.
What's mine? I was hoping that we'd get a little bit bigger of an emblem that says District of North Vancouver. It's a little bit small.
We'll do something for you, Councillor.
But I like the teal. It's a nice color.
There you go.
I think they have, we do have a handful of different background options for council. I like Councillor Bond's festive background there, but I found that it doesn't correct enough, quick enough. If you move, all of a sudden the colors change around you with these virtual backdrops. I was just going to mention as part of my report, I was a part of the unofficial opening of Story Lab, which is, we had an area in the Lynn Valley Library that was formerly a tech closet. It had all of the servers and everything for running the library business side. And we, a couple years back, recognized that we could transfer that infrastructure over to the District of North Vancouver Hall. We were able to clear that space out. And how we've reused it is to create the Digital Story Lab. And so what this does is it's a place where people can go and learn about recording technology. They can make a recording, they can stream it online, they can use our equipment to learn how to do it. We just feel that digital literacy in the coming age is going to be critically important for our community. It is going to become a barrier to people in our community to access information and resources if they don't understand the technology. And so we just felt that it was a priority for the library to produce a digital story lab space. And so I look forward to the formal opening up coming up soon. Councillor Back is our representative on the library board, but it's been great watching that space take shape, and I look forward to officially opening it coming up soon. Other than that, I did participate in a ports meeting this week discussing with the Burrard Inlet mayors our top challenges and concerns going into 2021, and was surprised that the port actually reported back that they did not have a drop overall in their operations during 2020 during COVID. They initially, a lot of their businesses were put on hold, and obviously the cruise line industry was devastated this year. But they've had such strong growth in agriculture, agri-food, and some of their coal markets, non-thermal anthracitic coal. They've actually had a decrease in the thermal coal portion of their shipping, and also a significant increase in containerized traffic. And so the port has actually had a very strong year. In fact, I do think that the port is going to be leading our country out of recession going forward. It really creates an opportunity for jobs early on in our region. Just wanted to mention that, but also that we talked about our priorities with them for transportation in the community. Other than that, I did want to wish everybody happy holidays this year. I haven't had the usual emails in about the silhouette of a creche out front. This is a manger scene. We also have a menorah out front, and we have a big panel that describes the different festivities for different cultures around the world and in our community. The tack we've taken is that multiculturalism is about adding stories, not taking them away. And so as people are celebrating their Christmas season, they can also learn about all of the other seasonal observances that are going on in our community as well. Learn a little bit more about your neighborhood, and who knows, you may get along better. So I'm glad that the district can tell those stories as well. I want to wish everybody happy holidays, and we do have 3 more, I believe, evenings of council meetings, at least, possibly a 4th. So we still have work to do, but this is just the last of our public regular meetings of council. But just wanted to thank everyone this evening. I see no further hands, so Councillor Murray has moved adjournment. I will accept, and thank you all very much for a great evening. Have a good night.
Good night. Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Good night.